With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Survivor 46 is here, and so is On Fire, the only official Survivor podcast, and we have a twist this season. The winner of Survivor 45, Dee Valladares, will be joining us every week.
We're going behind the scenes of the biggest moments, the how and the why things happen, and the strategy and analysis you can only get from someone like me, a Survivor winner.
Listen to On Fire, the official Survivor podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Our guest in this episode of Great British Bosses is in charge of a sport that is recognisable right across the world. It has 214 member nations, and every 2 years stages one of the most prestigious major international sporting events in the world. And for many, this sport is the sport of the Summer Olympic Games. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and I suppose you could say our guest used to run on the track. Now he runs it. Shortly after his arrival, the organisation that had been around for more than 100 years was rebranded with a simpler identity. And to quote his words from the press release in 2019, to create a symbol that can stand alone and work with partners and events. So what comes next? Let's find out.
And I'm Jon Ridgeon, and I'm CEO of World Athletics. Great to be joining you both.
John, how do you run an organisation with 214 members? You must be more politician than CEO.
Well, I'm very lucky because I have a president in Seb Coe who does the politics, and I'm left to do the day job. So look, I'm really lucky. I've got a great president who I work closely with. We're an organisation of approaching 100 staff, and we have a network around the world of over 200 member federations, which does give us a great global footprint. But I think our job really is threefold at World Athletics. First of all, it's to govern the sport. In many ways, I guess that's the dull stuff. It's to create the rules and do all of that, but that's important. Secondly, it's to stage hopefully inspirational events, like the World Championships every 2 years, which generates 1 billion eyeballs watching our sport. And then thirdly, it's to work with lots of different stakeholders, including our member federations, to try and just grow the sport by creating concepts and programs and broadcast ideas that can just reach millions of people around the world and hopefully get them to fall in love with athletics. So I think, it's a big global sport. But I think, we're pretty focused in what we need to do here to hopefully make a difference.
You mentioned the day job there. What is the day job? What's in the intro? What's in the email inbox for you then?
Well, I have literally my dream job. Like any job, it's easy to get sort of bogged down by the day-to-day noise and the email traffic. It's pretty heavy every day, as I'm sure yours is. So what I try and do is focus on actually, what really makes a difference in terms of growing the sport. And, at the moment, for example, we've got a really big laser focus on innovation and modernizing and future-proofing, the very, product that is the sport. And I try and carve out as much time as possible to do the things that will really make a difference. But it's the same challenge as all of us face, that, you can be a busy fool, or you can actually try and carve out time to really make a difference. And look, we start from a really wonderful position in athletics. We describe ourselves as both the number one Olympic sport and also the most participated sport in the world. I mean, simply put, more people run around the world than do any other form of sports. That's a great starting point. But we're also aware, and I'm really acutely aware of this, as is Seb Coe as president, that we live in a world that is changing faster than it's ever changed. The challenges of remaining relevant and popular to particularly younger people is greater than it's ever been before. The way people consume their sport is changing all the time, all the things that you know. So we're very aware that just to stand still, let alone grow the sport, you can't just carry on doing what you've done, for the last 20, 30 years. You have to change. And we're really, really focused on that. So most of my time I'm investing in trying to drive that change with a great team of people I work with here at World Athletics.
So, John, where is World Athletics as we speak? I said that you joined in 2019, you rebranded it. It's a lot more simpler. We know what it means. But where are we now?
Well, look, I think that we're in a good place from the point of view that, it's Olympic year. I'd like to think, and yes, I'm biased, but I'd like to think we're clearly the number one Olympic sport. There'll be a big audience watching our sport this summer. Participation in our sport continues to grow, but we've still got a lot to do. So I think what we've decided to do is dedicate certainly the next 2 years to really looking at what the sport is fundamentally about and seeing, how can we make it more dramatic, more entertaining, more fast moving, to make sure we build in the strengths we've got already. And what I think is good about that is John, we're not doing it because we're in crisis. Far from it. We're doing it that I think we've got a really stable, solid platform here, but we're always looking to the future, and that's what we're trying to do in terms of the product, in terms of the way we broadcast the product. Because World Athletics, if you look at what we've done in recent years, I'd like to think that we've been quite bold in many areas. The way, for example, we've protected the female category in terms of our transgender and DSD rules, the way we've tackled Russia in terms of its state-sponsored doping and banning Russia and making them do fundamental change before they're let back in the sport, the way we've put really good governance rules in place. There's a whole raft of things I think we've been bold in. Where we've perhaps been less bold, more timid is actually not really tackling the product itself. And look, it's a great sport. I don't think you need to do much with the men's and women's 100 meters. But I think, when you look at a sport as diverse and wide ranging as athletics, there are areas that we need to tackle and make better. And that's what we're trying to do over the next couple of years. So it's a big focus, and it makes my job a really exciting job as a result.
And could you give us a little idea about what that might entail? I mean, are you talking about kind of innovation and different events, or maybe looking at the way that data is evaluated? Give us a little idea.
Yeah, so I think it's 3 or 4 strands, really. So the first thing is we're looking to restructure the summer season so it always builds and culminates in a World Championships every year, to give it a kind of a consistent narrative that builds towards the big crescendo moment. At the moment, every year kind of looks a bit different. So we're trying to create some consistency that builds towards the big moment. Secondly, in most years, we either have a World Championships or Olympic Games. So that's great. That's our big moment, but not every year. So we're creating a new global championship to sort of plug the gap in the years where we don't have a big global championship, because it's like tennis and golf not having a year without 4 majors, and they'd never do that. So why would we have as a sport a year where we don't have a big global championships that gets 1 billion eyeballs watching our sport? So that's another thing we're doing. We're creating a brand new World Championship global event in the year where we don't have anything. And then also we're looking at all of the disciplines, the events, and going, right, how can we make them better, particularly the field events? And we did a really deep dive in terms of data capture last year. We're going to do that again this year, just so we really understand what works and what perhaps doesn't work quite so well in athletics, because it's a really disparate sport. We have lots and lots of events on track, field, on the road, and we're just particularly trying to tackle the events perhaps that are less popular, and how can we make them more popular, more exciting, more engaging? I'll just give you a tiny little example of what we're testing right now. So if you take the long jump, at the World Championships in Budapest last summer, a third of all the jumps were no jumps. athletes stepping over the front of the takeoff board. Well, that doesn't work. That's a waste of time. Okay, so we're testing, for example, at the moment, a takeoff zone rather than a takeoff board. So we measure from where the athlete takes off to where they land in the pit. So that means every single jump counts. It adds to the jeopardy of the competition, the drama of the competition, and at the same time, we're working out ways of how we can get instant results. So you don't have to wait 20, 30 seconds before the result pops up. We get it instantly, and just how we speed up the whole competition. So it's a whole range of innovations we're looking at based on hopefully robust data we've got from the World Championships and other events last year, and more research we do this year, just so we can try and make the product better for the future. So it's not about getting rid of things, it's about making what we've got already even more entertaining for the future.
What's been the reaction then to some of those early findings, both from the audience, the billion eyeballs that you talk about, but what is the European indoor champion Jasmine Sawyers telling you about what she thinks?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we're an amazing sport from the point of view we're 150 years old, okay, and we celebrate that heritage, and that's wonderful. But one of the downsides of being 150 years old and having such great history is that we are an innately conservative sport, probably like a lot of sports, particularly a lot of Olympic sports, and change is not easy, okay, which is why having robust data to demonstrate how things can be better really helps that story. And we've just started that journey in terms of hopefully taking everyone with us. So we have an athletes commission that we work with here at World Athletics, and we took only in the last month the athletes commission through some of the ideas like the long jump innovations that we just talked about through, and everyone's been very supportive. But what we've said as well is it's not just a matter of having, and this is what I'll say to Jasmine Sawyers when I speak to her, is not only are we, on paper, it's a good idea, we're also going to spend this year testing it as well, in real life circumstances with very good athletes. And if it doesn't pass testing, we'll never introduce it. So we're not just going to introduce things on a whim because, one of us thinks it's a good idea. We're going to, yes, it's going to be based on good data. Yes, we're going to test it really well. Then we'll introduce it. And probably in terms of a global level, a lot of these ideas may not even be introduced until 2026. We want to really spend the next 2 years thoroughly working them through, and then we'll introduce them. But it's going to be tough. And look, I'll be honest with you. I mean, Jasmine is a super bright athlete, super talented, and I think she is someone probably is a good example who will embrace change and work with us. But she might not, and for good reasons. If you dedicated your life to hitting that takeoff ball perfectly, and suddenly we replace it with a takeoff zone, I totally get that there might be initial resistance, but as I said, as long as it's based on good testing, good data, I think eventually it'll work through, but it will not be without its controversy. I totally, you cannot make change in a sport that was basically invented 150 years ago without some controversy. But I think it's worth doing, and we think it's worth doing, because ultimately this is about not this year. This is about making sure we've got a sport that's hopefully fit for purpose for another 150 years. And I think it's time to really tackle, in the way that we haven't up to now, what the core product is. Again, not to get rid of anything, but just to try and make what we've got as entertaining and engaging and dramatic as it possibly can be.
And does it help when you are bringing change into a sport that both you and the president were both athletes? Because to use a footballing analogy, the club, if you like. And we hear that so often, don't we, with people? How can someone from business run athletics? They don't know the sport. The fact you know the sport, does that help?
Oh, hopefully. Look, I think it is important to have a good feel for the sport. I don't think you have to be necessarily a double Olympic champion like the president to have a good view. But I'm very lucky that the majority of the team that I work with here come from an athletic background. Council, who are the politicians of the sport that ultimately have to sign off decisions, they're generally former athletes, although they have lots of skills they've acquired alongside their athletics as well, I might quickly add. But yeah, I think I'm surrounded by people who have a good feel for the sport, and I think it's difficult to do my job or drive change in the sport unless you do have a fundamentally strong feel for what the sport is all about, and have an understanding for kind of innately what works and what doesn't work. I mean, I've spent all my life in athletics, but I've also worked outside of athletics, and I think it's important to have experience outside of the sport as well, because otherwise you can just be in your little bubble. And hopefully we've got the right mix, and we've got, as I said, we've got some great experts working on this alongside, the athletics brains as well. And hopefully what people realize as well is the motivation for doing this is the right motivation. It's about making sure the sport can be, as popular as it possibly can be, because, it's a challenging world out there. There's lots of options, particularly for young people. And if you don't, as I said, if you don't evolve and change, you're going to get left behind. And I think it's a very challenging landscape for a lot of Olympic sports. And we need to make sure as athletics, we're the right side of that line. Because I think several Olympic sports could face a challenging future unless they also embrace change and future-proofing and modernisation.
Let's carry on this theme of change. You mentioned about this 2026 event. What might that kind of look like? Because I think you were a silver medalist, taking you back to 87 at the only second ever World Championships. So that was new when you were winning medals. So what could 2026 look like?
Yeah, so good knowledge, by the way, and that's a long time ago. But so in 1983, the World Championships were introduced to make sure we had an event outside of the Olympics, because until then we just had the Olympics, and it was an instant success. And I was very fortunate it was introduced because it allowed me to get a medal. And, and ever since, that's now become every 2 years, and it's our big event. And so we want to create another event in the years where we don't have a World Championship, so every other year. But it won't be exactly a mimic of the existing World Championships. We want to create a different product. So it's going to be faster paced, shorter. We're looking at 3 nights. Athletes very much still competing in their national strip, representing their nation, but it's going to be very much best of the best. It's going to be semi-finals straight into finals, only the most popular disciplines. And the idea is this is unashamedly meant to create a big global moment for athletics that's most people will consume via their broadcast partner, their national broadcaster. And athletes competing for the biggest prize money pot that there's ever been in athletics. But secondly, we can also use it as a platform for innovation as well. So quite a lot of the innovation we're working on now that I just spoke about, this is probably the moment where we'll unveil it in terms of a global platform. And some of the changes we work on now will be for the first time introduced at this new event. So we're really excited about it. At the moment, we're just working through the process of potential host cities, so we can announce later in the year where we're going to actually host this event in 2026 onwards. And so look out for some exciting announcements later this year.
Well, we'll certainly look forward to that. On Great British Bosses, we always talk about you and your career and how you got to where you were. We'll come to that in a moment. But last question on what's going on at the moment in world athletics. Netflix, huge documentary incoming ahead of the Olympic Games. Is that the future? Is Netflix the answer to all sporting prayer? Did you watch Drive to Survive, for example?
I did, and I watched Unchained and Full Swing, and I love them all, I must admit. Look, I'm super excited about the fact we now have our own doco-series on Netflix coming out this spring. And look, it's not the answer to all our problems. Of course it's not. But what it is, it's part of the armory of tools we have to reach new audiences. Okay, so if you look at what Drive Side has done for F1, they've opened up or helped open up the American audience. They've certainly helped reach a younger and more diverse audience, and I believe from the stats I've seen, they've also helped reach perhaps new territories. If it can do anything like that for athletics, wonderful. So we've chosen, it's going to be all about the 100-meter sprinters, which I think is a really smart move, because everybody, you don't need to know anything about athletics, the cachet, the sex appeal of being the fastest man or woman in the world, everyone gets that, right? We'd all love to be the fastest man or woman in the world, wouldn't we? And so I think we've got some really exciting personalities in the sprints, the Sha'Carri Richardsons, the Noah Lyles, people that are just gonna really work. And we've got, every continent pretty much covered. We've got sprinters from Africa, from obviously America, from Caribbean, from Europe, all in with a shout. And I think it's going to make it fantastic television. So yes, super excited to see it. I haven't even seen the first episode yet because it's still being edited, but I'm told Netflix is very happy with the content they've filmed. It comes out this spring, and yeah, we will judge whether it's been a success or not. I guess not whether I like it or not. I'm probably bound to like it. It's whether it can reach new audiences in new places.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
You're listening to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. We're in conversation with Jon Ridgeon, CEO of World Athletics. Jon, let me ask you this. What's more important? Is it the big TV broadcast audience, or is it full stadiums at your major events?
Sadly, it's got to be both. Clearly, 99% of people that watch athletics watch it via their television, okay, or digital or whatever they might, but they're watching it on a screen. They're not in the stadium, okay? But for an event to look great, to be taken seriously, for the athletes to be inspired, you need a full stadium as well, which is why Budapest, the World Championships last summer, was so powerful. You know, we've got a fantastic global audience as well. So it's actually both. And we put a lot of energy into making sure both, you know, the television pictures are brilliant, but also that the stadium audience has a good experience as well. And, you know, it's not always easy to generate a full stadium, because remember, our World Championships are over 8 or 9 days. There's morning sessions and evening sessions. You know, that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tickets by the end of the 9-day period. But when it works as it did in Budapest last year, it's wonderful. And what's exciting about it will work in Paris this year, I'm sure. And then next year, we're in Tokyo for our World Championships. That was the Olympic Stadium that, of course, staged the Olympics with no audience because it was the middle of the COVID nightmare. So it'll be wonderful to be back in that stadium. I'm sure it'll be a full stadium with the spectators in Japan that want to experience what they basically couldn't experience back in 2021 at the Olympics, and will be to experience in 2025. So I think we've got a good balance over the next 2 or 3 years of having both full stadium and a really engaging television product.
And before Jon shows off more of his knowledge of your outstanding track career and what he's read from your LinkedIn profile, one final question from me on this. You obviously inherited Doha in 2019, which didn't have the spectators, but it was terrifically presented. The way that the event was staged was absolutely amazing as a TV spectacle. When you talk, though, about having 200 federations, do you have a responsibility as World Athletics sometimes that you might have to go to some different places? You might have to look beyond London, Eugene, Helsinki, these traditional heartlands, because you are World Athletics and you do have more nations as part of your organization than anyone else.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And actually what we do when we start on a journey to find and appoint a new host city is we actually try to be very honest with ourselves and say, what are the criteria we're looking for? And sometimes it's to develop athletics in a new territory. But clearly that's more challenging than going to a traditional heartland like London. But remember, as well as the World Championships, which is our big showcase event every 2 years, we also have a whole roster of other events like the World Cross Country Championships, World Under 20 Championships, World Road Running Championships. So we have a group of slightly smaller events that we can still take around the world. So this year we're in Glasgow for the World Indoor Championships. We're in the Bahamas for the World Relay Championships. We're in Turkey for the World Road Running Championships. We're in Peru for the World Under 20 Championships. Obviously, we're in Europe, Paris for the Olympic Games. So, you know, so we have the ability to go around the world, you know, because we have, you know, every 2 years we stage 7 World Championship events. So I'm pretty comfortable that you know we do fulfill our global perspective and need in terms of working with lots of member federations.
Now, Jon, you were my hero growing up, and I'm not just saying that because you were down the road in Suffolk, and I grew up in Norfolk. You won a silver medal at these 87 World Championships, and then you went to the Olympic Games, and you were part of I would say, the golden trio: Jarrett, Jackson, and Ridgeon.
Well, yeah. I mean, so I still see Colin Jackson and Tony Jarrett. Tony Jarrett's a excellent coach now. Colin Jackson obviously works on the BBC and is still very much involved in the sport. I mean, they both had much longer careers than I. I mean, so I was fortunate that in my early part of my career, I had a bit of success. You know, World Championship silver medalist when I was 20, got fifth at the Olympic Games at 21, and then sadly, kind of injury. Sidelined me slightly, and I think I was sadly designed to sit behind a desk more than I was to be a runner. So I finally found my athletic sporting niche doing this job. But look, it's they were both amazing athletes, and it was incredible to have three of us at the same time. And there's no doubt about it, we definitely helped each other because the rivalry was so intense. I mean, we all get on very well now. We weren't necessarily great friends at the time, but we all get on, rub along, very well now. But no, it was an amazing time. At the time, I'd like to have had a longer career. But as I said, the upside of actually retiring early was that I was able to have, build a career initially in the business side of sport and then eventually end up in this job, which is, I mean, honestly, my dream job. And if you can, I speak to lots of ex-sports people, not just athletes, but ex-sports people. And often they say that, their best years when they were a competitor and, life's okay now, but they've never quite been able to replace the excitement they had of, running out onto the pitch at, wherever, Stamford Bridge, Carrow Road, wherever it might be, right? I didn't mention Portman Road, but
best not.
Yeah, but the point is, it's hard to replace the excitement of being an international athlete. I can honestly, say to you two that I have been able to replace that. So yes, I love my athletics career. Yes, I would have liked to have had a slightly longer athletics career, but now I'm doing something that I'm just as excited about every morning as I was when I was an athlete. So I class myself as a very, very lucky person to have landed in that place.
Because you mentioned about the sport business, you went to Fast Track as a partner, literally just after the Atlanta Games, or a couple of years after the Atlanta Games. Were the Atlanta Games that bad that you just had to go and do something else?
Well, no, I was injured and I was broke, so I need to. It's a great motivation being injured and broke. You need to get a job. So I got a job and got on with it. And actually, I just found that when I just kind of did a dual career to start with of radio and television. Presenting sort of at weekends as a hobby, and then during the week I did the sport business side, and I just found that I enjoyed it, and I seemed to have an ability to bring people together and make deals happen, or get people to work together effectively, and it just built from there. And I've been very fortunate that I had people that gave me opportunities. So for example, a great mentor to me, who was my initial chairman at Fast Track, was a chap called Alan Pascoe, former Olympic hurdler. I'm still a great mate. And, he invited me in to join Fast Track when I was very wet between the ears, or behind the ears even. And he said, look, would you join and would you get involved? And I said, yeah, absolutely, Alan. I'm there. Really, literally turning up at work on the first day, not necessarily knowing too much, but, hopefully you learn quickly and grow from there. So I've been very fortunate that people have given me wonderful opportunities over the way. Sure, I've worked hard, once I've had those opportunities. But I think everybody in their career needs a bit of luck along the way. And I think if people don't admit to having a bit of luck along the way, they're being slightly dishonest with themselves. And I've certainly, I've had some very fortunate relationships with people like Alan that have helped me along the way.
I wrote a blog actually about the Atlanta Olympics, about why actually it was quite good and was a blueprint for London in terms of what happened in Atlanta and legacy. And a lot of people, I think, don't tell that story. But we're telling your story today. So you didn't have any kind of ambitions to go into the shirt and tie part of the side of the business whilst you were competing. It was very much just 100% focus on being an athlete at that stage.
You try and live whatever phase of your life you're living in the full, and when you're an athlete, you're very blinkered and it's all about performance. But I also, once that came to an end, you have to quickly recognize that and you move on. And sport's always been part of my life. I guess, I've never really broken out of sport. I've always worked in sport, and I've been very fortunate I've been able to stay within sport. So look, it's given me a great life. In fact, I was only talking to my 17-year-old son the other day about what the hell he's going to do in his life going forward, as you do. And I said, you could do a lot worse than follow me into the business of sport, because actually, who knows what the world will look like in 50 years' time? But people like us will still be watching live sport. And actually, I think sport's a fantastic career, and I'd recommend it to anyone. And yeah, like the two of you, I hugely enjoy being part of it.
And do you ever wonder or allow yourself to wonder what would have happened if maybe your athletic career had come slightly later? Because you were doing it when it was hard. There was no lottery funding. There wasn't the support that exists for our track and field stars, certainly here in the UK, I'm talking about, to have a career, know that they're earning money. You said you were broken and injured. You didn't have that support network around you when you were running.
No, but it was a different time. But because we didn't know any different, you didn't sort of sit there and go, well, how hard done am I? So look, for example, I did have 2 or 3 good years when I was sort of 19, 20, 21, where I did earn actually reasonable money from the sport. And I remember I bought a house in London, and kind of, was building my life there, suddenly got injured, literally zero income, and I remember I had to move out of my house and rent it or whatever. But I don't ever remember sort of thinking, oh, the world is so unfair on me. I think you just kind of accept things at the time and move on. And look, obviously it would have been wonderful to be in time of better medical treatment and lottery funding and all the support network that the leading athlete gets now, that hopefully would have extended my career. But the flip of that as well is that actually, it's hard to move on from sport, and unless you're going to be, a Seb Coe, a Colin Jackson, it's best to get out of sport potentially quite early and get on with your next career. And and the chances are you don't end up being a double Olympic champion, right? So even though I'm really lucky that I experienced a period of my career where I was an international athlete and loved every second of it, I'm also very proud of, I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to build a second career that, as I said, I equally enjoy. And it's tough, because I regularly now come across sports people from all sorts of sports, particularly Olympic sports, that perhaps are in their early 30s. They've been lottery funded. So, they've been to a couple of Olympics playing hockey or athletics or swimming or whatever. They've never made particularly a lot of money, because it's really hard to make good money in Olympic sports. You've got to be right up there. Most people just make a living wage. And it's really tough in your early 30s to suddenly stop being a full-time professional sportsman and go, I want a job, because they might be super bright and well qualified, but if you've not really done a kind of conventional office job for the first 30 odd years of your life, it's a really tough transition to make. So as I said, again, I didn't think it at the time, but looking back, it helped me in the transition to my next life, actually leaving the sport, in my early 20s and moving on. So I think it's good. And as I said, I know an awful lot of sportsmen that really struggle with that transition from sport to the real world, even ones that have been hugely successful. So I think it's a difficult journey.
You mentioned the Olympics. Last question for me, bringing it right back up to date. Is Paris 2024 going to blow away every single memory of London 2012? And actually, is that what the world needs as well? Because we keep banging on about how great London 2012 was. Well, actually, it's a long time ago now, and we need a new Olympic kind of dream.
It was great, though.
It was.
And actually demonstrates the power of sport, how it can bring people together. In a world that's pretty complex, sport is still the one thing that brings everyone together. It's wonderful. No, Paris is going to be fabulous. Paris as a city is wonderful. So the backdrop to the games is going to be superb. The facilities are good. The sport's going to be sublime. I mean, I can only talk for athletics, but certainly the athletes raise their game in Olympic year, and we're going to see some stunning athletics. I mean, I just hope actually from an athletics perspective, some of the athletes that have been successful over the last 2 or 3 years, the Noah Lyles, the Sydney McLaughlins, the Mondo Duplantis, they can do really well again in Paris and carry on building their names. Because what we need as a sport is kind of 10-year long superstar names, like Usain Bolt built his name over a 10, 12-year period. So that's what I'm hoping for. But I think it's going to be a really special games. And look, I don't think we need to forget London, but yeah, let's live in the moment and enjoy Paris. And I'm certainly looking forward to it. I'll be spending 2 or 3 weeks in Paris this summer, and it'll be very special. But I'm glad I'm not organising the Olympics. It's a complex affair, and there's the Paris organisers are certainly facing lots of challenges at the moment. But I'm absolutely confident they'll deliver a really, really inspirational games.
Jon Ridgeon, Chief Executive Officer of World Athletics, thank you for speaking to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, John. Been a pleasure.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.